Hey everybody, welcome to Randi Sands and the Mediumship crew. It's nice to have everybody together tonight. And as normal, on the third Monday of every month, we have SSK in the house. SSK. And we're going to be reviewing who SSK?
Bang Sisters.
Yes, and this is because Jack was misbehaving last night. This is a review of spiritualist pioneers. This is not some other kind of show. Spiritualist pioneers. So, SSK, why don't we give you the floor, because you're just always a wealth of information. And thank you, Joanne, for introducing us. It was an amazing thing that happened. And why don't you get us started, and everybody can feel free to chime in and ask questions or add to or whatever they want.
All right, sounds good. So these fabulous ladies behind me over each shoulder are the Bang Sisters. So not to be confused with anything other than their last name was Bang. All right. So anyways, the Bang Sisters, I know we said Chicago, Illinois. I know we're doing the 50 states. One was born in Maine, one was born in Kansas. However, they relocated at toddler age to Chicago, Illinois. So we will let Illinois claim the Bang Sisters.
Good enough for me.
At this point. So the first one is Elizabeth. She's the oldest. She would be this one in the white. Wait, over there, in the white shirt. She was the oldest. She was born in 1859. Like I said, in Maine. However, they moved at the age, I think she was the age of like 3 when they moved into Chicago. And her sister, also known though, for the most part, her name, Elizabeth, known as Lizzie. Everybody called her Lizzie. They didn't call her Elizabeth. So she's the oldest. And then just a few short years later, in 1862, we have Mary. And there we go. There's Mary. Where are we? There's Mary. Mary, also known as May. So she was born in 1862. So a little bit about, they were actually born into a spiritualist family. Their mother was a medium. She was a mental medium, not a physical medium. So I know we've talked about this in the past, but there are 2 phases of mediumship, one being mental, which is where messages are received through the mind of the medium and then said through the medium's mouth, given just as in a discussion. And then there's physical mediumship, which actually takes place outside of the medium and is witnessed by our 5 physical senses. So the reason I say that is when these 2 little girls were tots running around the house, physical mediumship was occurring in their home. So it has been said that coal, like that black chalky coal, would fall from the ceiling in the living room in which they would play in. So the kids would be covered in coal dust. And that was like when they were 2, 3, 4 years old. And then as they moved, obviously up in age, by the time they were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there were wrappings, like just like the Fox sisters had in the cottage. Furniture would move. I was trying to figure out if it was levitation, like the tables would actually like float, but it sounds like more like furniture moved across the floor. So, and of course, the mom being a medium would have seances and circles in their homes, and they ended up being kind of like they grew into it, I guess is the word I want to use, because the physical mediumship started occurring. Interesting enough, as they got older, they stepped away a little bit from the mediumship aspect. Each of them got married. So let's see here. Of course, I don't know everything like all in here. So I do have a cheat sheet of notes that I need to look at once in a while. But Lizzie, the lady in the white, she got married, had 2 daughters. and got divorced. And our little friend over here, May, she got married 3 times, divorced 3 times, and they had a son. So that's kind of the history, I guess, of them. But they didn't necessarily step away from mediumship, but they weren't necessarily doing the type of mediumship we're going to kind of talk about. That kind of started a little bit later in their 30s. They learned what we call now today precipitated art, which is a physical mediumship ability. Interesting enough, if you guys recall our conversation about our animated encyclopedia, in Chicago, she was taken to court. Ironically enough, the Bang sisters, will talk about that scandal that occurred in Chicago also in 1904. So before Mayor C. Callwater got arrested in 1915, the Bang sisters went through their own legal troubles in Chicago a little bit. So it sounds like Chicago, now that I'm doing all this investigating, might not be the place you want to practice mediumship. I'm just saying, but just saying. Anyways, so let's talk about their mediumship, because really I think it is extremely important, the type of mediumship that's done. It's actually not done that I'm aware of right now currently, to the degree in which these sisters did them. So it's called precipitated art. And what, if you can envision this, so again, I always take you guys back in time. So kind of envision this. We're talking early 1900s. They would sit in a parlor, and due to marriage and divorce and their own mediumship skills, they were pretty well off. Women. They weren't, I would not say that they were poverty stricken at all. They were born into poverty, but quickly worked their way out of poverty by the time they were teenagers. So they were pretty well established women. Obviously, look at them, they look pretty regal. And they had their own business, and they worked together as mediums. So they didn't work separately. They had to work together to produce this precipitated art. And what that means is so if you can envision going into a parlor in the Victorian times, sitting down, you would make an appointment with them to get connected to a loved one. In the room, there would be the table, the chairs that you sat at, but there would be nothing on the table except for 2 white pieces of paper or canvas, depending on how they were, what they were using that day, because I've seen both works done on paper and in canvas. No paintbrushes, no paints, nothing, just the 2 pieces of paper. And those that came in to receive the message would sit at a chair right across from them, and behind them would be a window, like a picture window where the sun would come in. And the 2 sisters would hold up this piece of paper, these 2 pieces of paper, one sister holding each corner, and they would connect to spirit. And as they connected to spirit, they would give what they were receiving. So if they were receiving a mental image, if they were receiving words, whatever it was they were receiving from spirit mentally, they would tell the person who was getting the reading, but on the paper would be forming the portrait of that person. And usually in less than 30 minutes, a full portrait of that person appeared on the paper. Which, if you can, I can't even grasp that concept. So if you see this picture behind me of both of them, if you could just imagine it being a white blank starch piece of paper, and as we're talking here this evening, these images start showing up on the piece of paper. Like, what? With no brush, with no paints, with nothing except for just those papers, the images. Now think about it, it's the 1900s. Cameras were not popular. Not everybody owned a camera. The actual photography process was a process back then, and only certain people did it. And these portraits would be exact replicas of the deceased loved one that was being contacted. So how in the world could fraud occur in that sense? Right? Like, how is that even feasible? That the fact of these random people, and let's just say it, a lot of them didn't even give the Bang sisters the true name. You know, it's not like, oh, hi, Randi Sands, I'm making an appointment with you. Here's my, you know, here's a picture of my entire family, my, you know, my, like all this information. It was just a name. It was just a random name that they would come in, sit down, and then a portrait of their deceased loved one would show up, usually in less than 30 minutes.
Okay, so we all have something to talk to our guides about. Hey, we want portraits.
I think so. I mean, really, I mean, it's quite fascinating to me. I do have some, which I know now I should have done a PowerPoint, I know, of pictures of them. I'm just saying, of images they did. But this was the type of mediumship they did. And honestly, they didn't talk the whole time. A lot of it was just sitting. And the picture actually developed over time too, and or changed. So this type of mediumship was only really seen by the Bang sisters and the Campbell brothers at the time. There were other mediums who did do this that actually ended up being accused of fraud. But again, there was ways to, I guess, prove the fraud, if you would. Like they would have art supplies in the room. So let's get into how the sisters were never actually debunked. So in 1904, somebody comes in for a reading, because I guess that's what you would call it at that time, right? Reading, a portrait sitting. And they get a portrait, and it's of this woman. And they gave the Bang sisters this fake name, Jane Doe, right? But this woman appears on the portrait. So the woman takes the portrait. I swear these are the same two evil police officers that got Mercy Caldwaller. So they called Wallader. Yes, there we go. Say it right. Got her because they were undercover police officers. So they went right back in and said, nope, this is fake. You know, this is not whatever name. We gave you a fake name. And they were like, all right, you know, whatever. They're like, search our house, do whatever you want. This is what we do. And so there was this great debate that started. Just like anything when it comes to mediumship, it seems like you're always having to prove yourself, right? There's always this need for proof, which I agree with to a certain extent, but I think we can get carried away with it into another extent. And so there was this big controversy from like about 1904 to 1908 in their mediumship development, and actually ended up really kind of being debunked. There's a lot of as that these two women were genuine mediums. Their house was searched from head to toe. Floorboards were lifted. Walls, plastered walls, were actually taken down just to prove that there wasn't any form of acrylic paints, paper, hidden photographs, down to the fact they even lifted their skirts because they were accused of rolling up portraits in underneath their skirts. And then somehow in broad daylight, mind you, this was not pitch dark, this was broad daylight, these readings occurred, were able to sneak out a painted canvas and switch it. Like, I don't even know if that's possible.
Okay, I can understand looking up their skirts, but behind the plaster?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how are you going to get to that during a reading? Like, hello, if you have to take it down, then there's no way into it, right?
Right. I mean
come on now.
Skepticism is good, but that was not healthy. That was just over, a bit much over. But again, the women went through it. I mean, all for the love of spirit, really, and all for the comfort it brought. There are some fantastic, unbelievable, fantastic letters. I will give you a few books that you guys can read about the Bang sisters at the end. And I do recommend getting them. They're short, quick reads. They're good to have. And actually trying to see. So the sisters in this time, 1908, they started also traveling to Lilydale. They worked in Lilydale for 30 years. They also worked in Camp Chesterfield, which is in Indiana, which is a spiritualist camp in Indiana. And they also hit other spiritualist camps, not as regularly, but they did work. I mean, this was their job. This is what they signed up to do, and they did it 5 to 7 days a week. But what was produced? So if I wonder if I just, I know, I wish I could show, I should show, but I'll tell you about a couple things. Were portraits of these loved ones. And again, think about it, the time, right? It's not like now we carry around our phones and, you know, you want to see a picture of my daughter here, you know, you want to see a picture of my son here. You know, back then, you were lucky if you even had a family portrait, depending on what your wealth was, right? Because photography wasn't cheap, and only like the middle class, you know, the middle class had maybe one portrait, and that portrait usually was, I hate to say it, a picture of the deceased loved one, right? That was when, if you think about back in the Victorian morning, post-mortem pictures, it was the only time they could afford to get a picture of their loved one was when they passed to the world of spirit. Plus, it was the way, because people couldn't travel easy to go to a funeral, and that was still at the time of, you know, being laid out in the home. So, you know, you only had a couple days. So they took the portrait to send the portrait to the family that lived throughout the world, you know, throughout the US who couldn't make it, right? So if you can imagine, these portraits that showed up were beautiful. They were stunning. They were etheric, angelic. It was amazing because it was spirit producing their image on how they look in the spirit world. So they actually talk about the portraits as living portraits because they move. Their eyes move with you as you move across the room. They can shift forms. They can change. In Chesterfield, there was a woman that was done beautiful. And when I'm not talking pocket size 8x10s, I am literally talking about huge pieces of artwork, you guys. This isn't just like on a little note card. This is like, you know, frameable artwork that would be put on the walls that would produce in less than 30 minutes. And the detail was stunning. The other cool thing about precipitated art is nowhere on the painting or the drawing, or I don't know, some of it almost looks like pastels. You know, it almost looks like, for those of you who know about art, right? Pastels is kind of like a color chalky kind of substance, and it like almost floats on the paper. And that's kind of how these are produced. But what's fascinating is there's not any mark. There's no stroke mark. Like, you know, there's no brush mark. There's nothing. Like, you can't even find when and where that gray color would have hit. You know, everything is very even. And the eyes are fantastic because the eyes are opened, and the depth of the eyes and the details within the eyes of these portrait paintings or precipitated art are just unbelievable. Like, I wish, like I said, I wish I could show you some. And actually, for some of you, because I know some of you are all over, if you live close to Lilydale or Chesterfield in Indiana, they have a huge collection of Bang sister portraits. So you can see them. Not all the time did they do just loved ones. Sometimes it was spirit guides. Oh, I love when we get kitties.
I know. I was just thinking he has a lot to say about the Bang sisters.
He does. He wants to talk. They also, like, because not everybody lost loved ones. Let's face it. I don't know. Some of us might have lost some loved ones that we were close with or not close with, but sometimes they would also get spirit guides, right? So there was both. There was both spirit guides and loved ones, but the loved ones are probably the most, for me, the most affirming of continuous life, because again, I know the process of photography back in the early 1900s. It was not easy. it was very difficult. And the odds of any of these mediums being able to Google search or download or find a portrait of this loved one, children being reunited with their parents, these little kids that are, transitioning. So for example, one of the stories of the Bang sisters, which I find so fascinating, is this gentleman had come to them with himself and his one daughter, and they came into contact and set up an appointment with the Bang sisters to try to reach the mother and the other daughter who was lost in childbirth, right? And so as the story goes, the Bang sisters sit down with him in the parlor. They're holding the canvas, and as the portrait is coming to life and coming to fruition, his wife appears holding the baby in her arms, and then the sister, who's in the room with dad, who's still here in the physical, also appears on the painting. So he has not only a picture of his wife, but he has a portrait now of his wife and his two daughters. And he was very happy with it. He did not complain at all. He said, "I'm so excited to have a family portrait." He takes the portrait home, and about 2 weeks later, he walks downstairs and he is now on the portrait. So like literally the portrait changed and continued to grow and develop, so everyone was included into this family portrait. So that's how amazing this type of mediumship is it was, especially during that time, it was able to really give these people closure, if you would. I mean, we don't ever close grief out, but it gives us the confirmation that we'll see our loved one again. There's another time too, like for example, like the moving or the living portrait. There was a portrait that was done for a widow. He had lost his wife. I think it was like a sickness. I can't remember what it was. And again, I think this was like almost a 5-foot portrait. So again, we're talking huge canvas, right? In the middle of the day, he's sitting, I think this was done in Chesterfield. He was sitting with the sisters, and within, 30 minutes, his wife appears in her wedding dress in the portrait. And there's roses all around her. These pink roses, which were part of her wedding bouquet. And there's like a trellis of them. And actually, I have heard and been told that the number of roses will change. So depending on the day, you should count the roses, because some days there's 14, some days there's 8, some days there's, more or different. So it's quite fascinating that these, and it's what's interesting about these, precipitated arts paintings is that they are so, like the Bang sisters, there you'll never find an autograph. Like you can't go like scrolling down looking for like Lizzie Bang's signature, because like they said, we didn't do it, spirit did. We were just the medium for them. And what's I find absolutely, enthralling in my mind, if you would, is the fact that there's probably hundreds and thousands of these throughout the Midwest and the East Coast, and even into the West Coast, because they were known to travel to California, that probably ended up in some auction or Goodwill, because nobody knows who that old man in that portrait is. And it's probably a piece of, artwork, precipitated paintings. But I do have, I'm just going to show you a couple pictures. If I do, I have to stop sharing my background, though, I think is how this works. Anybody remember?
Yeah, I think you do have to stop sharing it.
Yeah.
Well, now you've done it, Stacy, because now I'm going to have a talk with my spirit team. Like we're going to have a board meeting. Because if the Bang sisters can do it, I'm convinced that we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you're going to see me in readings holding up a piece of paper. Come on, guys. Come on.
Do it. do it. You know,
I'm
and I do
convinced.
know, like the Campbell brothers, and I know that we're talking about the Banks sisters tonight, but it almost goes apropos. They go together in a way. The Campbell brothers weren't brothers really, though. The Banks sisters were truly sisters, but the Campbell brothers were partners, but obviously called brothers due to the time again, they were working almost the same time the Banks sisters were. So you had the Campbell brothers and the Banks sisters both in Lilydale. Can you imagine that time? Like I'd be needing to run to that season immediately. Be like signing up for so many readings I wouldn't even know what to do with. But yeah, so they used, sometimes they might have actually, the Campbell brothers were known to actually have some sort of medium, and I mean artistic medium in the room, watercolors, acrylics, oils, those kinds of things, brushes. The brushes never left the hand. See, again, there's no touching. It's not like we have spirit art. We all can do spirit art. Where we hold the instrument and we're kind of like drawing it through the impression we're receiving in our mind. But that's considered a mental form of mediumship. What the Bang sisters did was considered physical mediumship. Like it was absolutely spirit, like created, because there was no brush, no holding them. All they did was hold the corners of the paper together. That's all they did the whole time, and that the image would appear. So it's quite fascinating. So anyways, one of the books that you can buy is Precipitated Spirit Paintings by Ron Nagy. There's also one just on the Bang sisters. So if you just look up the Bang sister book on Amazon, you can find it too. And there's another precipitated art book. If you type in Precipitated Spirit Paintings by a woman, and her name is escaping me now, but the cover of the book is also a portrait. But I can kind of show you in this book here. So here's an example. Oh, here we go. Can you guys see that? Okay. So this is attributed. You're going to notice that all of precipitated art will be attributed to, because again, spirit did it. So there's never going to be any signatures on them. So it's attributed to. But this one here, there we go. She's real pretty. And her name actually is Blossom. And she was the spirit guide for, who is she? Oh, it doesn't say in here. I believe she was the spirit guide for someone. I can't remember now who, but I feel like it should be important, but I apologize. And this one actually is in the national office in Lilydale, so I get to see it. Joanne gets to sit by it every single day, so I'm uber jealous. But there's something to be said if you can see any of these in person, because when you stand in front of it, you don't even have to be a medium. You just need to feel it, and you'll feel the presence of spirit within the painting. It's quite amazing. So again, look how detailed this is, you guys. So this isn't like a stick figure drawing, like that's what I would give you, like the hangman, like, and here's grandpa. They put a little belly on him, I mean, like, well, that's just me. And then here's another one. I'm awfully bad at this. I don't understand why. How is this not working? Okay, can you see those? Can you see them?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, raise them a little bit.
Okay, like that?
Yep.
Like that. Ooh. So anyways, you can see how detailed these are. Tammy, what are you waving for, dear? I see you.
Wait a minute here. I wanted to know, is she the only, those two the only ones that actually were able to do portraits without any kind of medium that anybody knows of?
Yeah, that I know of. I mean, I study a lot. There's a lot of mediums that we're still learning about. So much of this was done quietly in homes. But yeah, I mean, that I'm aware of. The Campbell brothers, like I said, just to digress for a minute, because this is funny, when spirit wants something done, and and you don't have it, they'll make it happen. This is what I find fantastic.
Right.
So in the
Yep.
Maplewood, actually, I think it's in this book, but in the Maplewood, which is the hotel in Lilydale, there is one of the most famous paintings. Okay, here we go now again. Wait a minute. Do you guys see it?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. He's crooked a little bit. I know. I don't understand why I'm backwards here, but anyways. He was done by the Campbell brothers, and he was a spirit guide too. Now this painting is over 8 feet tall. So if you can imagine 8 feet in less than an hour, that image appears on the canvas. And there's a hint of red in the background. However, red was not an oil paint or that was left on the table. But there was red in the rug. So there's actually a white perfect spot because they took the pigment out of the rug that was on the floor of the Maplewood and used it for the red in the background of the paint.
Wow.
So, but yeah, the Bang sisters are the only ones I know of where the art medium wasn't in the room. You know,
I'm wondering if they could have done it. The reason I'm asking is because I believe that it was their collective energy together, you know, and like you say, they didn't work separately. So it was, you know, something that took a great amount of energy to produce, I think.
I think so too. I have to agree with you. You know, and even the Campbell brothers, they worked together too. They never worked separate. So I think and I wonder why, you know, the question is why can't we do it? Like Randi says, like, we're going to have this meeting and I'm going to get together. I'm going to get together with these people and we're going to figure it out. And I think it's probably a collective, because that is a lot to produce. If you think about physical mediumship in totality, you know, even a tiny airport to come into the room, like a little coin that's fallen out of a trumpet, how much energy that has to take of one, the medium, you know, producing the ectoplasm and working with their team, and then the people sitting in the circle, because usually you have a team of what I call batteries.
Right, collective energy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not talk about how much work it is, because I'm planning on having a board meeting where I'm going to speak very passionately to my spirit team. I don't need them to hear how much work it is.
Yeah.
Well, you may need a second person to go in on it with you in order to do it, to manifest it. So.
Jack.
Jack's like, I'm not sitting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I find it, and what I can't get over is how long they worked. I mean, if you think so, let's see, Elizabeth passed to spirit in 1922. May or Mary, this is questionable. I would like to know where they're buried. I'm trying to find them. I can't find them. I think I can find Elizabeth, but Mary seems to be the one that's up in question. Again, I think she had 3 husbands, so I'm not sure what last name she used.
And who gets divorced back then?
Spiritualist women, because I really do believe, I have to just say, Andrew Jackson Davis was actually a supporter of divorce, and the women's suffragette movement was very strong in allowing women to have their voice. And the best saying I hear is, not all suffragettes were spiritualists, but all spiritualists were suffragettes. So I think that 3 times, and not because of like death, you know, like, no, I'm just done with you, thanks.
Bye. I want half.
One off. Yeah, but Ron Nagy actually, you know, in his book that he wrote, he gives, you're gonna find different dates. It's just like with the Fox sisters too. Sometimes you're finding different dates of when they were born and when they passed. And so Mary, we're not really kind of sure. It says the date I found was 1917, but then in an NSAC program of 1922, it honors both sisters passing to the world of spirit. So we don't know if they maybe both passed in the same year, which wouldn't be surprising if they worked like that 7 days a week. Do you know, that's what I also want to say too, is I would be fascinated by how, so you're talking 1904, that's when they were accused, but they were already practicing before that. So you're talking, you know, what, maybe 1890s they started with the portraits, and then did them up until what, 1920, just say. They did a portrait every half an hour, even if they did 4 a day, 5 days out of the week. Do you know how many portraits are probably out there? That's what I'm saying. Do you know how many? Get looking at these pictures and start buying them if they move. Like, I don't know.
What's more amazing is that people may have them handed down through the family line and not even know.
And not even know.
Not even know what they're sitting on.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, what I find so remarkable about these women, you will find people like Wikipedia. Don't ever listen to Wikipedia. I can't stand it. I really want to just, you know, take them by their bootstraps and change the entire spiritualist. Because again, it depends on how you find out. They talk about Hayward Carrington, who was a researcher of spiritualism, as debunking them, but really, honestly, I can't find any claim to that. You know, if you read Ron Nagy's book, if you go into newspaper articles, the Chicago Herald was actually quite fascinating to me now that I was just learning this, because so in 1904 was the whole like letter to the editor kind of bashing the Bang sisters and mediumship, spiritualism in general, basically saying nothing but we're a bunch of charlatans and taking advantage of people, you know, of people who have lost loved ones. And then usually there was always, and that's the thing, that's what people see. They see that one newsletter article and then that's the truth, but yet they don't really go into the research and dig. And like the Sunflower, which was a spiritualist publication and newspaper, had hundreds of letters basically, you know, affirming that the Bang sisters were true mediums as their loved ones were produced, like spitting images of their loved ones, you know, down to the point that, like, for example, one of the girls, like the little girls, I think she was born with like a, what do they call that?
A cleft palate.
Thank you, Tammy. But in the picture, she didn't have it anymore. It was, but you could see a little scar or a reminiscence of what it was like, you know. And again, you're talking what, 1899? How are the sisters going to know, you know, that what that child looked like, to just, you know, and then to have that little tiny nuance, if you would, to confirm. So I think most of the scandal that was created, if it was, like I said, it was minimal. The Bang sisters really went out with a bang, no pun intended, that they just couldn't be debunked. I mean, what they did was absolutely genuine, and fascinating. So let's bring back precipitated art. I'm all for it. But I don't want to sit that long. I don't think I could sit that long. Anyways.
What makes you think we have to sit that long? They said a half hour.
Well, yeah, hun,
that's an average reading.
Yeah, I get that, but the sitting to produce the physical mediumship, they were kind of born, I guess, if anything, if you ever want to have the whole discussion, are we born mediums or do we develop into mediumship? I think that, you know, I think we all have the ability. I think some are born, I would say the Bang sisters were born into it. At 2 and 3 years old, to have coal dust showing up out of nowhere and like literally caked on their face and caked on their floor like they were drawing it, I think they were pretty destined to be precipitated art mediums. And then, you know, so I don't know, to sit to get to that level of being able to do physical mediumship. I think, Randi, that's the commitment I think I'm unable to make at this time.
Here's what you don't understand. Times have advanced.
Yeah.
You see, things have changed. We don't have to do it that long anymore.
We'll see. Coming next week.
Work with me here. Work with me. Work with me on this one. We're going to have meetings with our spirit guides now. We're going to have board meetings. We're going to have to speak very passionately.
Yeah.
We're not taking no for an answer. We got this.
Absolutely. That is hysterical.
No, you got to be convinced, Stacy. You got to be convinced. You have to have conviction.
Oh, yes, that's true. They always say spiritualism is not a religion of conversion, it's of conviction.
Faith, girl, faith. We got this.
We got it. Yeah. Anyways, on that note, ending note, if you do, like I said, if you can get to Chesterfield, I haven't yet, but I'm on my way. That's on my list this year to make it to. The house actually that the Bang sisters, so in Lilydale, they traveled to a few houses. They never owned a home in Lilydale. They rented them for the season. Unlike the Campbell brothers, that first home that you see when you come into Lilydale was the Campbell brother, or no, the Campbell brothers' house burnt down. Oh, well.
Oh, darn.
Apparently that happens to a lot of the pioneers.
Look beyond the veil. I just remembered that. Oh, anyways, but the Bang sisters would just rent houses, but in Chesterfield they have their own house that they would stay at, and it's in the process of being converted into a Bang sisters museum. So I would definitely get a chance to look at it, and absolutely wholeheartedly 120 million% look it up, and look up some of the precipitated art, because it is really, if you can see some, if you ever come up to Milwaukee, I have some in MPI, so I'd love to show you, and Joanne has some in the NSAC office that is on display. Chesterfield has some on display, and yeah, just sit in front of any precipitated art, and I'm telling you, you feel spirit. You just feel it. Like it's going to walk off that canvas and talk to you and tell you all kinds of great things.
Can you imagine the relatives that had those pictures handed down in their line, right? And going by it and seeing the eyes moving towards them, or, you know, something being added or taken away from the picture, and them thinking they're going crazy.
And just what comfort, though. Do you know what I mean? What comfort that would be for the bereaved. Do you know, like I keep thinking of that guy and his daughter, and, you know, losing his wife and his other daughter to childbirth, which was common back in that time, right? Again,
right.
If you look at that time, and to actually be able to have the essence of his family still around him is just so comforting. It's almost unexplainable.
Okay, but I'm not so sure that roving eyes is comforting.
Right. To people that didn't know the background.
I'm not convinced on that.
I'm sorry, it feels very Harry Potter.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced on that.
You know, as you go up into the...
Oh, and the fat lady sings to open the door. Whoa! Like if that could happen, that would be great, wouldn't it? They start singing.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
You know that just
somebody going to the thrift store and finding one of those pictures and taking it home, and all the stuff happening. What if it just went blank?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
You almost kind of gotta wonder if sometimes it wouldn't after a while. Do you know what I mean? Like if it really wouldn't. It was interesting. I have no clue, but I'm gonna stalk Chicago thrift shops and antique stores like it's nobody's business. And what's interesting is and thank you for, I have to tell you, thank you for always having me on, because I learned stuff too, because I continue to research, and I realize there's addresses of the houses they lived in. So I'm like, oh, road trip. Like I'm going to be stalking these people's houses, like knocking on the door if they're still there. I heard one of their houses was torn down because they lived in 2 houses in Chicago. I heard one was torn down and now is a big, you know, high rise or whatever. But if the other one's there, you know darn well I'll be like, can I just sit in your parlor? They're going to be like calling the I'll be calling you.
Hold my canvas.
had a crazy lady.
Crazy lady sitting in their parlor.
Do you mind holding the
paper.
corner of this canvas with me?
Oh, God, you're funny.
You know what the roving eyeballs reminds me of, right? I joke once when I got bit by the dog, the scar I have up here. I joke and I tell people, yeah, you know, my third eye kind of got it. I need one of those sticks to lead my way around.
Oh my goodness.
I might.
I think precipitated painting is going to come back, Randy. I think you're going to do it with your roving stick. Your stick will just paint. That's
Hey, I'm serious. I'm going to work on that. I'm very serious. I'm not joking on that.
well,
front.
it's like slate writing. I mean, you know, we could, you know, slate writing too. Slate writing had more room for fraud, actually. Again, it was done in complete darkness, right? So there's, you know, more accounts of fraudulent mediumship in slate writing, but slate writing is just as possible as precipitated painting, so you could start there. I mean, the sisters were known, they weren't known for slates in the beginning, you know. Once, I mean, I don't know, I don't know, I didn't live their life, but
Why waste time? Let's just go right for it.
right to the painting,
Yeah, why waste time?
read it right up.
We're
I
just,
don't
know
know.
what's-
For some reason, I feel like time. I get it. It's the old me, I guess, that we have to sit for it. Like we have to live. And Randy's like, no, right out of the gate.
no, yeah. I'm confident. I'm going to work on this.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did the history say anything about their children? Did they follow in their mom's footsteps?
So interesting enough. So Lizzie had two children, two girls. Actually, she was the day Lizzie was arrested in Chicago. And was put in the canner for mediumship, right back when that was happening. And the next day she was released, but her oldest daughter had passed to spirit the night before, while she was in prison. She was 8. So and there is some word of her other daughter not necessarily doing mediumship that we know of. And she did marry, but they had no kids, so there's no surviving line on Lizzie's side. And on Mary's side, she had a son, and the son married, and they had one child who I believe is the contact in Ron Nagy's book, like that aunt. She never had, so the Bang sister line, if you would, is, I think, you know, done, if you would. You know, there's no living a direct line of the Bang sisters. But yeah, there was someone who contacted Ron Nagy as he was writing the book, actually, who would have been the great, oh, actually, no, she's the great granddaughter of Mary, of May. So, but she doesn't say that she does mediumship. That would be a good question to ask, though. Now I want to know. I'm like, I'm stalking her. I'll be looking up her phone number when we're off.
That was a fabulous question. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, very good. Any other questions? I did my job. Oh, Joanne.
There you go. So that creepy precipitated painting that's upstairs on the second floor, can I just wish that it changes and it might change for me?
You mean the Irish guy?
Yeah, yeah.
He is so not creepy. He's so fun. He's just this fat redhead Irish guy. I love him. He's so not creepy. He's like a large leprechaun.
Hey, if she says he's creepy, he's creepy. And yes, I think you should manifest that. And I think you should take a picture before. And I think when it changes, you should take a picture again. So there's documentation. Girl, you manifest away.
Aw, I think she should love him just the way he is.
He might be better. There might be a new and improved him.
You know, I'm trying to remember what book he's pictured in, and he's not pictured in this. I think there's a picture of him somewhere. I don't know if he's attributed to the Bang sisters or if he's a Campbell's brothers. He's definitely a precipitated painting. Murphy, that's his name, isn't it? Is it Murphy? He is kind of creepy. I slept up in that room once, and he's right
He's very
outside the hallway.
creepy.
Joanne's like, I'm not trying to know his name. She's like, I'm trying to stay away from that man.
Good stuff.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask or add before we sign off? Yes, no, maybe?
No.
All right. Well, as always, it's been fun, at least for me. I hope for everybody else as well. And
Thanks, Stacy.
yes,
You're welcome, Tammy.
yes, our regular contributor. And we were lucky because we got her twice this month because she got punished.
I did. I'm not saying anything now, but Irish nothing.
You're not talking about barrettes. You're not talking about anything. It's like zip. Is that it? Ooh, that feedback's bad.
Yeah.
All right, so let's all say good night to the good people. Good night, good people.
Good night,
Good night, good
people.
people.
All right.